I love a good quote. I do. I love it. It could lift you up. It could be used as an affirmation. It could be used as just a type of motivation for you in any situation. So I love a good quote. And if it rhymes, also great. But there's just something about quotes and sometimes just like the shortness of it and just what you need to hear. Just like if you were going to someone and they say just like one little sentence or a few words and it just like shifts your mind, or changes your perception on something. So I love quotes. So, but the thing is, when there's a lot of quotes thrown around and there's so many likes on it and there's so many people that are like, oh, I love that quote, or it's a famous quote. The thing is, sometimes if it's so famous and so well known, some people just like don't question it. And so they just take it in and say like, oh, wow, like that must be true, especially who wrote it. And they've written all these other things that were profound and changed my life perhaps. So this one also must be true, even though like I don't feel like great about it. So here's an example. So if you this is just like paraphrased because I've seen it in so many different ways. So I just thought I would get the paraphrased version, give you guys the paraphrased version right now. Because I've just seen it done so many ways. So, but this is the idea of it. So if you see something in someone you don't like, it's a reflection of something within you that you don't like. So this was a big one for me because when I was going through stuff years ago and I saw this, and then I had heard like a couple psychologists like confirm that like how true this is for them, like people that I like looked up to and stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, is that true? Like, because like I analyze for a living. And back then I was more critical because I feel like that was what my training like programmed me to do, was like to pick things out in a not so positive way most of the time, to be able to like solve issues and problems and figure out the reason behind it and stuff. So when I heard this, and especially I was going through things, it was almost like it was very painful because it was like, then it made me more like I really held on to the quote. And then when I would see people and I would notice things about them, I was like, oh my God, is that within me? And I would try to like really search deep within to figure it out. But like, you know, sometimes you need guidance and stuff for that too, especially if you're going through stuff. It's like, gets a little blurry. It's harder to see within sometimes. And so this really bothered me. But then when later on, as years went by, and then I would see it or hear it, and I wasn't going through things, I was able to like question it and realize that like this quote is not true for me, and it's not true for a lot of people. And when someone's going through something and they see something like that, it could really affect them. And it could really make them more critical of themselves than they already are, especially if they're going through things. And so it's a really bold claim for all humans for this to be true as well. And like you might have, so the thing is like, you need to be aware of the quotes. You need to be aware of all the quotes that you come across, because at one point, I used to just like follow different accounts when I used to have like a social media account, like a personal one. And I loved it because I saw these positive quotes and all these things that were uplifting, but then they would throw in some here and there that like I didn't think was positive, like this one. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like, and then one can say like, well, if it's triggering for you, then maybe there's something within that. But I wouldn't say it was triggering for me in the beginning. I would say like, after that situation, when I was going through things and seeing this quote and trying to constantly look within, and because every time I would see someone and I would like see something within them, I would be like, oh my God, is that within me? I guess at some point there was a trigger, but not in the beginning. It became a trigger because it made me constantly like pick at myself. So I guess within that, that's really great that like if you see something within someone you don't like, then like I was picking at those things. So it was good for me to to learn not to, but it wasn't true that, oh, I saw something within them and it's a reflection that that's within me. I think that like sometimes you learn a lesson with people, or some people are just in some parts of their life, they're very good at intuitively knowing that like, oh yeah, that's not a good sign or a good trait of like, and it won't jive with me and my personality. And it's not good for me in like a positive way. And so just because you see it within someone doesn't mean that it's something within you. Yes, we could all have these types of traits depending on what our paths go on. We're all capable of it, but like to say that it's within you as well is like a really intense, bold statement. And I'm not sure who wrote this quote, and I'm not sure if it's always out of context too, right? So like whoever intended it probably thought it for a specific time or situation, or there's a context to it perhaps, and the possibility that like it was written in another language, which I haven't looked up, but first. So because a lot of things that I've heard like in Farsi or Persian, then when I hear the translation of it, I like know immediately that like it's like apples and oranges. Sometimes it has some meanings in there, but like it's so vastly different, but both poetic. So sometimes it's about like the poetic aspect of it, that it's like, oh, it sounds great, and it's who's interpreting it as well. I've tried to find like many books of like Hafiz, which is like which like Rumi, who is Persian. There was also Hafiz, and Hafiz to the people of like the Persian people, though he's still like such a renowned poetic figure that people look to his writings. And when I've seen the translations of a lot of them, I'm shocked. And mind you, I don't read Farsi, but when it's translated by like people that I know that really knew like how to read it, like they were taught how to read it by family, by school, and all of that growing up, and then hearing other people translate it, or hearing bits and pieces that I kind of understand of it, and then hearing the translation that they would have in English, I would be surprised. But I also understand that like just like any artist, it's like it's how you see it, and so they're writing it based on like what they know and what they see, and depends on what they've gone through or where they are at as well, just like any art, I believe. And so that's really important to keep in mind when looking at quotes, especially when they're translated, because also there's sometimes not a direct like translation for words, and it's like thinking about that in English is like, what do you mean? Just put some words together. But then because when I hear things in Farsi, and I'll just be like, oh yeah, there isn't a direct translation for certain words in English as well. So that's good to keep in mind. And it's not about like, oh, the author said something bad. It's like, it's all about context. Because if you were to ask them, they wouldn't ever be like, yes, I wanted to do this to hurt other people. It's like, no, they did it to share something and to provide some wisdom within it, perhaps, or to share what they've been going through, and maybe it could help whoever they've been going through. So I wouldn't say it was like a bad thing. And I feel like if it's helped some people, that is great. And I feel like some people have said not I feel like I know some people have said like, oh, this quote has helped them figure things out within, which is so fantastic. But just from experience and now being like out of like this blurry, darker place, I then realized that like then I started really evaluating a lot more quotes and not just taking them on passively, because sometimes when you're going through stuff as well, you're more likely to be in more of a passive state because you're just like, help me, help me, help me. And you're just taking in information, especially if you're like trusting sources of information and you're just like, well, they said 10 things that were great. The 11th one, I'm not 100% sure about, but I'm going to take that on and trust it as well. So always being mindful and aware and conscious of like the information that you're taking in, no matter who the source is from. So that's like really, really, really important. And yeah, so overall, like quotes that the world loves does not mean it is true or stands the test of time, especially with like different generations and experience and knowledge. And yeah, so was there anything else? Yeah, so that's basically it that I want to say about like quotes and being mindful of it, because I love quotes, but I now proceed with looking at things through a lens of like not too passively, which I still enjoy it. It's not about like critiquing it and picking at things. It's more about like looking at it and being more discerning. So so that's really important, because at the end of the day, you should trust yourself and learn to trust yourself over anything else. And if something doesn't feel great to you, question it, even though it might make sense for the 100 other people around you or millions of people around the world. Say like, no, this is it. It's okay to question things for yourself, so that you could figure out like, how does this actually make sense? Because maybe they need someone like you to question things and look at it from a different perspective as well. Or you might come to the same conclusion, but through a different process, and still look at it from a different perspective, which is still really important and valid. And it's going to help you with other areas of your life too, when you're able to like to look at things and be like, okay, I'm not just going to take it at face value just because everyone else said it's true or it is. It's just like, I don't get it. And so sometimes not getting things, so important. Like sometimes in schools, I'm hoping it's not the case now, but of course I wouldn't be surprised, because like a lot of reasons, but I'm sure there's still times where people are not made to feel very intelligent in class, whether by teachers or classmates, even though there are wonderful like teachers out there as well, but also like sometimes classmates and stuff. So you might like just be like, okay, yes, I agree, because like that's what the teacher said, that's what the kids say. And so you might just go along with it. And that could be a habit that you picked up earlier on. But when you start questioning things for yourself, or if you go home and question it because you're just like, oh, it didn't jive well with me, it's really good. It's a good habit to have, because you want to understand it in a way that makes sense for you. And then when you go to do other things in life, you're going to want to try to understand it in a way that makes sense. And I think that would be like very helpful, and try to figure out like, how did they get to this answer? You know, it's kind of like a hypothesis that you have to like, okay, but how do they get to this final conclusion? So you kind of got to put your investigation or researcher hat or analyzer hat on sometimes. And so that's really good. So that was just an example. I'm sure that quote has helped people, especially if it was written in certain ways, or like in specific situations where it did connect with them and they can see that reflection within themselves. But I think like for it shouldn't be a staple statement that that's really intense to say that like something you see in someone else is something within you. I think you could say that when you're thinking of us as like a whole or one consciousness. And so when you're thinking that like, you know, we all have these things within us that could be activated perhaps, but I wouldn't but say that it is within you, but it can be within you to be like a seed that could be watered and grown if you're in certain environments and situations as well, maybe to have that level of like empathy, but or compassion more so. So but doesn't mean you just like blindly follow or blindly just passively take things for what it is just because it sounds good or sounds poetic or sounds wonderful and stuff. So anyways, I thought that I would share that in case that jives with anyone or can help anyone, and just to create another lens of like, oh, okay, I should be more conscious of like when I'm looking at quotes and affirmations and stuff like that. But yeah, no matter who it's from. Okay, thanks. Bye, everyone.